An active weather pattern is in store for the United States over the next 2 weeks. Where will the rain and snow be the heaviest? We have all the details and more next at the Weather Farm. Welcome to the Weather Farm. I'm meteorologist Christopher Hale. Let's dive right into our forecast as we have an active week of weather in store for the United States. As we begin our Monday, we are going to see continued showers across Southern California moving into western Arizona. We also see an area of disturbed weather that brought heavy rains across Louisiana and Mississippi for our Sunday. Those are moving east through Alabama into Georgia and the Carolinas. Up across Hudson Bay, we do have that strong area of low pressure that is bringing snow across parts of Ontario into Quebec. That will move into the northeast for our Tuesday. And we see that system moving into the northeast on Tuesday, but right behind it, we do have yet another clipper system that is making its way through Saskatchewan into Manitoba. That will bring snow to the Great Lakes Tuesday night into Wednesday. That area of disturbed weather that was in the southwest has all but fizzled, but it will reorganize as a strong low pressure system over Texas by the time we get to our Thursday. High pressure dominates across the southern part of the United States. Warming temperatures with a more zonal flow from west to east is in store for the United States. In terms of that rainfall across parts of Southern California, we have seen some beneficial rains. By the time we get to Monday morning through Tuesday or Monday during the day, we could see an additional half inch, quarter of an inch in most locations. Isolated 1 inch amounts are possible under those heavy thunderstorms. This is all good news to help fight those wildfires that have been raging in California over the last 2 weeks. If we look at our upper level pattern, the 500 millibar chart, here's that area of low pressure across the southwest. We do see a deep trough that's going to move into the northeast, bringing a shot of Arctic air to the northeast by the time we get to our Tuesday into Wednesday. But across most of the United States, we have ridging building, especially from Texas up through the Central Plains and out to the East Coast. Warming conditions as we have a generally zonal flow from west to east, but we watch this cutoff low as it continues to meander across the Mexico border into Texas. It is projected now to move a little bit faster than what we thought yesterday in our video, and it's going to be associated with a winter storm system that's going to move into the Ohio Valley by the time we get to Saturday. Behind it, continued west to east, warming, a zonal flow. But look behind us. We have an area, another trough that's going to be digging into British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest by the time we get to next weekend. But for the majority of the country, we are going to be experiencing warmer conditions than we have seen for most of our January. We put our map into motion on our Monday. We see that area of this precipitation kind of dissolve across Arizona. That clipper system again is going to move out of Saskatchewan into Manitoba, diving south and east through the Great Lakes and into the northeast, bringing about 2 to 5 inches of snow for most locations. Across parts of New Mexico into Texas, where an area of low pressure is going to gather strength, it is going to then move up into the northeast by the time we get to Thursday into our Friday. I will tell you that the models are moving this system a little bit faster than they were about 24 hours ago. So now this system is expected to move through the Ohio Valley on Friday as opposed to Saturday, and behind it, as that colder air rushes in, we will see some of that rain turn to snow. Across the Pacific Northwest, we are going to see a continued precipitation flow with heavy rains and heavy mountain snows in the forecast for next weekend and beginning that first full week of February. In terms of our temperatures, most of the United States is going to be near normal to slightly above normal, especially across the northern plains through the Great Lakes by the time we get to our Tuesday. Out west, we do see some below normal temperatures, but we have a big surge of temperatures 15 to 20 degrees above normal from Texas to North Dakota to the East Coast by the time we get to our Thursday. That is going to be the pattern that we are going to see over the next week. We're going to see east of the Rockies being generally warmer than normal compared to the seasonal norms, and we're going to see colder or near normal temperatures across the Northwest. But by the time the calendar starts to flip to February, if we look up towards British Columbia, we see that Arctic air building, and we're going to get a shot of that across the Northwest from Washington to Idaho, Montana, and to Wyoming by the time we get to our first few days of February. Temperatures here could be 30 to 40 degrees below normal, while most of the United States is going to be enjoying relatively warm conditions, 10, 15 degrees above seasonal norms. Let's take a look at that storm system that's going to impact the Ohio Valley down through the southern states on our Friday. We thought yesterday that we might be seeing some severe weather with this particular system, but as the system has sped up and it's moved through Mississippi, we are going to see a lot of moisture associated with this storm system. The PWAT values are very high, 1 to 2 inches across Mississippi into Alabama, even stretching into Tennessee. 1 inch amounts into southern Indiana. When we look at the vorticity map, this is the 700 millibar vorticity map. We see these reds and these oranges. That indicates that there is rotation in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which is an indicator that we could be seeing some convective storms. However, when we look at the vertical vorticity, this map, and we look at these negative values, these blues down here that we see across parts of southern Mississippi into Alabama, even the reds are showing some negative vertical vorticity. And so what vertical vorticity means, if you have positive vertical vorticity, you are seeing that counterclockwise rotation in those upper levels of the atmosphere. Those are the types of rotation and updraft that you need to build severe thunderstorms. When we see those vertical vorticities being negative, that means actually the air there is moving in a clockwise rotation, which is not conducive to severe weather. In fact, it's a sign of a weakening storm system. So we really don't expect anything more than heavy rain from this particular system as it makes its way across the south on our Friday. Let's take a couple looks at our model runs. This is the American model. It wants to take that area of low pressure up through central Indiana, right along the Ohio River, actually. The problem is we're not going to have the cold air in place. We're going to have strong winds out of the south ahead of it, which is going to warm temperatures into the 40s and 50s for our Friday. And so we're not going to get to see that snowfall because this is a favorable track for heavy snow in the upper Ohio Valley. But because the warm air will be in place, we won't see that snowfall. Now, the European model is a little bit further north and west with this one. So it wants to take that low through Missouri to central Illinois into central Indiana and then take it off to the east coast. So again, it keeps this entire system a little bit wetter and a little bit warmer because the cold air is lagging the storm system. The main thing with these two particular model runs is that since yesterday, we have seen an acceleration of that storm track. So this is about 12 to 18 hours faster than what we saw 24 hours ago. Again, if this system were to slow down and let that cold air catch up, we might be talking about a major winter weather event for the Ohio Valley, but right now it doesn't look likely. The main thing that we are going to be watching is out across the Pacific Northwest, where they are going to get deluged with heavy rain and snow as we make our way Friday into Saturday. We could easily see 1 to 2 inches of rain and then 1 to 2 feet of snow in those higher elevations. And this is all very indicative of the La Niña pattern that we are seeing. We see very wet conditions across the Pacific Northwest. We see cool conditions riding down from the Gulf of Alaska into British Columbia. And as we look across the eastern half of the United States, that polar jet is really staying pretty much north or just slightly south of the Canadian border. We generally are seeing dry and warm conditions across the south and wet conditions across the Ohio Valley. This has not been the pattern that we've seen for most of January. It's almost resembled an Enso neutral to maybe a weak El Nino pattern, with a lot of the storm track and the cold air being much further south and the Pacific jet stream also being further south, bringing those southern storms. As we move into February, we don't think that's going to happen. We think the pattern is going to resemble more of a La Niña pattern, a little bit warmer weather, for the lower half of the United States into the Ohio Valley, and a wetter pattern as systems ride along the polar jet and the Pacific jet into the United States. Not to say we won't see this jet dive further south during the month of February from time to time, but the overall pattern is more of a La Nina pattern. And this is true in our CDOS index where we monitor. So again, when we are at -1 or lower, we are definitely in a La Nina pattern. When the numbers are between -1/2 and -1, we're in a weak La Nina. When they're between +0.5 and -0.5, we are what's called enso-neutral. Anything above a +0.5 is an El Nino pattern. So we've seen that as we've moved from November into December, and even at the end of the year, we were in a strong La Nina, even though our weather pattern didn't quite resemble that, especially as we moved through January. We kind of moved back up towards a -1 value. But we see that over the last 10 days, we've seen that value decrease. And for the first time, we really believe we are going to enter a La Nina pattern for the month of February. And our temperature outlook shows the same thing. Colder weather to the north and west, less likely chance of colder than normal temperatures as we get to the Central Plains. But then along the south and up to the East Coast, we are expecting warmer than normal temperatures as we begin the first 10 days of February. And in terms of precipitation, wet in the Pacific Northwest into the Intermountain West, dry along the south, and wet across the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. Now this particular map is showing a more above average precipitation for most of the United States. But again, as I mentioned, we will have some slight fluctuations in that overall La Nina pattern that we move throughout February. So while a typical La Nina is typically dry across the south, it doesn't mean that we won't have periods where it's going to be wetter than normal and then we go back into being drier than normal. A lot to watch over the next 10 to 15 days to see how long this pattern will hold, but signs are pointing that it will be a predominant pattern for most of February. Hey, we thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm. Share this video with your friends. Like, subscribe, click the bell notification icon. If you like the content that you see here, let us know what you would like to hear more about, and we hope to see you again real soon at the Weather Farm.